What have you done? You want to kill your only daughter. What did she do to you? You heartless man.
The village of Umok, nestled in the heart of the Igbo land, was known for its vibrant culture and unwavering faith in tradition. It was here that Adeebi, the only child of her humble parents, grew up under the watchful gaze of a loving community. Adeebi's father, a farmer, and her mother, a basket weaver, worked tirelessly to make ends meet. Though they lacked material wealth, their home was rich with the values of integrity, hard work, and a profound fear of God. Adeebi was a vision of beauty and grace, with deep brown eyes that sparkled like the morning dew and skin as radiant as the golden sands of the Niger River. Her charm was matched only by her humility and devotion to her family. In the evenings, she could be found singing hymns with her parents, her voice carrying through the village like a balm of peace. Despite their struggles, her parents understood the power of education. They sold their prized yam harvest and wove baskets late into the night to afford her tuition at St. Agnes College, an all-girls institution with a reputation for producing intelligent and disciplined women. Adeebi, you are the light of our family, her father told her the night before her departure. Hold on to God, and no storm will dim your shine. The day of her departure was both joyous and somber. The entire village gathered to bid her farewell, offering gifts of fruit, beads, and heartfelt prayers. Adeebi clung to her mother, whose still strict face betrayed the pride and fear she felt in equal measure. Remember who you are, her mother whispered. The world is vast, but our God is bigger. Never forget the values we taught you. Adeebi's arrival at St. Agnes was nothing short of overwhelming. The sprawling campus, filled with tall buildings and well-dressed students, was a stark contrast to the simplicity of Umok. She was assigned a roommate, Nkem, a confident and charismatic girl who seemed to know everything about the school. Nkem took an instant liking to Adeebi, showing her around and introducing her to new friends. But there was something unsettling beneath the surface of this vibrant new world. Adeebi noticed how some girls seemed to gather in secretive clusters, whispering in harsh tones and exchanging knowing glances. Late at night, she would hear faint chants and rhythmic drumming coming from an unknown corner of the campus. When she asked Ntem about it, her roommate simply laughed. Oh, Adeebi, you'll soon get used to it. Every school has its quirks. Adeebi brushed it off, determined to focus on her studies. Yet, as the days turned into weeks, her heart couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The warmth of her upbringing and her faith seemed like distant memories in this strange and alluring environment. Little did she know that her journey at St. Agnes was about to challenge everything she held dear. St. Agnes College was an architectural masterpiece, its towering walls covered in ivy, standing like a fortress of tradition and knowledge. But despite its serene facade, Adeebi couldn't shake the feeling that something lay hidden beneath its surface, a whisper of secrets woven into the very fabric of its existence. Adeebi's first week was a whirlwind of lectures, introductions, and getting accustomed to the new environment. Nkem, her roommate, quickly became her guide and confidant. With her honey voice and sharp wit, Nkem was magnetic, a natural leader who always seemed to be at the center of every group. She took Adeebi under her wing, introducing her to the social circles that ruled the campus. But the school wasn't just a place for academics or friendships, it had its own unspoken hierarchy. Late at night, when the world outside was silent, the campus would come alive with an eerie pulse. Adeebi would often wake to the faint sound of rhythmic drumming, muffled whispers, and the flicker of candlelight in the distance. What's that noise? She asked Nkem one night. Oh, it's probably just some girls doing their silly rituals, Nkem replied dismissively. You know, traditions and all that. Don't worry about it. But worry Adeebi did. She had grown up in a home where spiritual matters were taken seriously, and the unsettling feeling in her chest refused to go away. One afternoon, as Adeebi walked back to her dormitory, she noticed a small group of girls huddled under a tree. Their laughter was light and carefree, but their eyes told a different story. One of them, a striking girl named Amora, caught Adeebi staring and flashed her an enigmatic smile. Adeobi, right. You should join us sometime, Amora called out. Join you for what? Adeobi asked, feeling a strange mix of curiosity and apprehension. Oh, you see, Amora replied, her voice dripping with mischief. It's enlightening. That night, Nkem invited Adeobi to a gathering. It's just a study circle, she said. A chance to unwind and connect with other girls. You've been so uptight lately, you need to loosen up. Adeobi hesitated, but eventually agreed. The meeting was held in a secluded part of the campus, in an old, candlelit room that smelled faintly of burnt herbs. The girls greeted her warmly, their laughter and easy camaraderie putting her at ease. They spoke of empowerment, loyalty, and breaking free from societal expectations. Adeobi, who had always felt the weight of her village's hopes on her shoulders, found their words intoxicating. But as the night wore on, the atmosphere shifted. The girls began chanting in a language Adeobi didn't recognize, their voices growing louder and more rhythmic. Nkem handed her a carved wooden object, instructing her to repeat certain words. The room seemed to spin as Adeobi, feeling a strange pull, complied. When it was over, she felt a mix of exhilaration and unease. Welcome, Adeobi, Amara whispered, her eyes gleaming in the candlelight. You're one of us now. Adeobi smiled weakly, but a chill ran down her spine. She had taken a step into a world she didn't fully understand, and there would be no turning back. The days following the gathering were a blur for Adeobi. She couldn't stop replaying the events of that night, the chants, the strange object, and Amora's hauntingly cryptic smile. Yet, to her surprise, she began feeling a newfound sense of belonging. For the first time, she wasn't just the naive girl from Umok. She was part of something larger, something secretive and powerful. The group, calling themselves the Sisters of the Veil, soon became a constant in her life. They invited her to sit with them during meals, included her in private discussions, and treated her as one of their own. Kem and Amora, in particular, were always by her side, filling her days with laughter and camaraderie. It felt like a family, an intoxicating escape from the pressures of academic life and the expectations her family back home had placed on her. However, not everything about the Sisters of the Veil was comforting. Their meetings grew more frequent and more intense. The rituals, which initially seemed like harmless bonding exercises, took on a darker tone. During one gathering, Adeobi noticed Amora sprinkling a red powder into the flames of a burning candle, causing it to flare unnaturally high. What's in the powder? Adeobi asked, her voice trembling slightly. Amora smiled, her eyes gleaming with an unsettling confidence. Knowledge, Adeobi. Power. Things you wouldn't understand yet. Adeobi tried to laugh it off, but her unease deepened. She began noticing changes in herself. Her prayers, once fervent and filled with faith, now felt hollow. The hymns she used to sing with her parents echoed in her mind like distant memories, overshadowed by the chants of the sisters. Even her dreams turned dark, filled with shadowy figures and ancestral voices she couldn't decipher. One evening, as she prepared for bed, Nkem sat beside her with a sly grin. Adeobi, I've been meaning to ask, do you feel different? Stronger? Adeobi hesitated. I don't know. I feel confused. What exactly are we doing in these gatherings? Nkem's smile faltered, replaced by a cold, piercing gaze. We are changing the world, Adeobi. We are freeing ourselves from the chains of judgment and tradition. But you have to trust the process. If you don't, you never truly understand. That night, Adeobi received her first task as a member of the group. She was to approach one of the younger students, a shy girl named Chidima, and recruit her into the fold. The idea made her stomach churn, but the pressure from Kem and the others was overwhelming. If you don't bring her in, Amora warned, you'll never rise in the sisterhood. The idea made her stomach churn, but the pressure from Kem and the others was overwhelming. If you don't bring her in, Amara warned, you'll never rise in the sisterhood. And trust me, staying at the bottom is dangerous. Adeobi reluctantly approached Chidinma the next day, weaving a tale of sisterhood and empowerment. Chidinma, wide-eyed and trusting, agreed to attend the meeting. As Adeobi watched the younger girl nod enthusiastically, a palm of guilt stabbed her heart. That night, during the initiation, Adeobi saw something she couldn't ignore. As Chidinma repeated the ritual words, her eyes glistened over, and she collapsed to the floor. The other sisters laughed it off, but Adeabi's instincts screamed that something was deeply wrong. When the meeting ended, Adeabi slipped away from the group and returned to her room, trembling. Staring at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the girl looking back at her. "What have I become?" she whispered, tears streaming down her face. But it was too late to turn back. The transformation in Adeabi was becoming more pronounced, and those around her began to notice. At home, her parents commented on how distant and cold she seemed during their occasional phone calls. Her mother, ever perceptive, asked if she was still praying every night. Adeabi always lied, forcing a laugh as she assured her mother that her faith was as strong as ever. But deep down, Adeabi felt the cracks in her spirit widening. The once vivid memories of family prayers and her father's wise words seemed like shadows barely clinging to her consciousness. At college, the Sisters of the Veil continued to exert their influence. Amora and Ken became more demanding, expecting Adeabi to lead new recruits and participate in increasingly elaborate rituals. One evening, during a particularly tense meeting, the sisters performed a ceremony unlike anything Adeabi had seen before. The room was filled with the scent of burning herbs and a strange, pulsating energy. Amora stood in the center, holding an ancient-looking staff adorned with symbols Adeabi didn't recognize. "We are the chosen," Amora proclaimed, her voice echoing as if amplified by an unseen force. "Through us, the old ways will rise again. Through us, we reclaim the power stolen by those who seek to control us." The other girls cheered, their voices blending into a cacophony that made Adeabi's head spin. As the ceremony progressed, Amora approached Adeabi and handed her a dagger with an intricately carved handle. "Prove your loyalty," Amora whispered. Adeabi stared at the dagger, her hands trembling. "What do you mean?" she asked. Amora smiled, but there was no warmth in her eyes. "Every sister must make a sacrifice. It's the only way to ascend." The room fell silent, the weight of expectation pressing down on Adeabi. She could feel the eyes of the group boring into her, waiting for her to act. Her mind raced, searching for an escape, but there was none. With a shaky breath, she placed the dagger on the altar, refusing to carry out whatever dark acts they had planned. Amora's smile faded, replaced by a cold, calculating expression. "Weakness," she hissed, "but we let it slide this time. You'll learn soon enough, Adeabi." After the ceremony, Adeabi returned to her room, her heart pounding. Nkem confronted her there, her demeanor more sinister than ever. "Do you think you can defy the sisterhood?" she asked, her voice low and dangerous. "There are consequences for betrayal, Adeabi. Don't make us regret bringing you in." That night, Adeabi had a vivid dream. She stood in a dense forest, surrounded by shadows that whispered her name. Suddenly, an elderly woman with a weathered face emerged from the darkness. "Adeabi," the woman said, her voice firm but kind. "You are treading a dangerous path. Return to your roots before it's too late." When Adeabi awoke, the dream lingered in her mind. But even as she wrestled with her doubts, she felt trapped. The Sisters of the Veil had woven their web around her, and escaping seemed impossible. Yet, in the depths of her heart, a small spark of hope began to flicker. Adeabi's life began to spiral into chaos. The once innocent girl who had arrived at St. Agnes College with dreams of academic success was now entangled in a dark web of secrecy and fear. The sisterhood hold on her was tightening, and every attempt to resist seemed futile. The guilt of recruiting Chidinma weighed heavily on her, and the memory of the girl collapsing during the ritual haunted her dreams. Back at home, her parents' concerns grew. Her mother called one evening, her voice laced with worry. "Adeabi, my daughter, are you all right? You sound distant." "I'm fine, Mama," Adeabi lied, her voice shaking. "School is just stressful, that's all." Her father took the phone, his deep voice steady and reassuring. "Remember, Adeabi, no matter where you are, God is with you. If there's anything troubling you, come home. We will face it together." His words struck a chord, but Adeabi couldn't bring herself to tell them the truth. How could she explain the shadowy rituals, the ominous warnings, or the growing fear that she was losing herself? At school, the tension with the sisterhood reached a boiling point. During one of their gatherings, Nkem pulled her aside. "Adeobi," she said, her tongue cold and sharp. "You've been holding back. If you're not with us fully, you're against us. And trust me, being against us is dangerous." Adeobi's heart raced. She was beginning to understand just how far the sisterhood's influence stretched. They weren't just a group of rebellious girls. They were something much darker, much older, steeped in an ancient power she didn't fully understand. Her breaking point came when she received a surprise visit from the village pastor, Reverend East. He had been invited to the college to give a lecture on faith and morality, but when he saw Adeyemi in the audience, he knew something was wrong. After the lecture, he pulled her aside. "Adeobi," he said gently, his eyes are searching hers. "You are not the same girl I saw last time. Your spirit is troubled." Tears welled up in her eyes as she shook her head. "I'm fine, Reverend, truly." But Reverend East wasn't convinced. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Whatever darkness you're facing, remember that no evil is greater than God. Come home, child. There is still time." That night, Adeobi sat alone in her room, clutching a small Bible her mother had packed in her suitcase. For the first time in weeks, she opened it, and her eyes fell on a verse, "The Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear?" Her moment of reflection was cut short when a knock came at her door. It was Nkem, flanked by two other sisters. "We need to talk," she said, her voice low and dangerous. They led her to the meeting room, where Amora stood waiting. "Adeobi," Amora said, her tone icy, "we've heard whispers. You've been talking to outsiders. Do you know what happens to traitors?" Adeobi felt her chest tighten. She was trapped, caught between her growing faith and the unrelenting grip of the sisterhood. As the girls closed in around her, she realized that the time for escape was running out. Adeobi's heart pounded as the sisters surrounded her, their faces shadowed by the flickering light of the ritual candles. Amora stepped forward, her piercing eyes looking onto Adeobi. "We trusted you," she said, her voice cold and calculated. "But now we hear you've been talking to people outside the sisterhood. Reverend Eve, of all people, tell me, Adeobi, have you forgotten the vows you made?" "I haven't betrayed anyone," Adeobi replied, her voice trembling but defiant. "I just needed clarity. I'm trying to understand what this all means." Amora's lips curled into a predatory smile. "Oh, we'll help you understand." At her signal, two of the girls seized Adeobi by the arms and forced her to her knees. The room seemed to grow colder, the air thick with tension. "You've forgotten what binds us," Amora continued. "Tonight, we'll remind you." She raised the carved staff, and the other girls began chanting in a language Adeobi couldn't comprehend. The room darkened, and the shadows on the walls seemed to take on a life of their own, twisting and writhing like living creatures. Adeobi's fear reached a fever pitch as she realized the sisterhood's power wasn't just metaphorical, it was real, and it was terrifying. As the ritual intensified, Adeobi felt an overwhelming pressure in her chest, as though unseen hands were gripping her heart. Her vision blurred, and she saw flashes of her parents' faces, her father's kind smile, and her mother's tearful eyes. A voice echoed in her mind, soft but firm, "Stand strong, Adeobi. You are not alone." Summoning every ounce of courage, Adeobi interrupted the ritual, her voice cutting through the chanting. "No," she shouted, her words ringing with unexpected strength. "I won't be part of this anymore." The room fell silent, the candles flickering violently as if responding to her defiance. Amora stared at her, a mix of shock and fury on her face. "You don't get to leave," she hissed. "You're bound to us, Adeobi. You swore an oath." Adeobi struggled to her feet, her resolve hardening. "I may have made a mistake, but I will not let it define me. Whatever power you think you have, it's nothing compared to the God I serve." Amora's laughter was chilling, echoing through the room like shards of broken glass. "You think your God can save you here? You're already ours, Adeobi. There's no escape." But Adeobi wasn't listening. She rotated for the door, shoving past the other girls. Their shouts followed her as she ran through the darkened campus, her heart pounding like a drum. She didn't stop until she reached the chapel, a small, forgotten building on the edge of the school grounds. Falling to her knees, she began to pray, tears streaming down her face. God, I've lost my way, she whispered. Help me find the strength to break free. As she prayed, a strange calm washed over her. The air in the chapel seemed to shift, growing warmer and lighter. Adebe felt a presence, comforting and powerful, as though unseen arms were wrapping around her. Suddenly, the chapel door creaked open. She turned, her heart leaping into her throat, but it was Reverend Ears. He stepped inside, his expression grave. Adebe, he said softly. I knew you'd come here. The battle for your soul is not over, but you've taken the first step. Let's pray together. With the Reverend by her side, Adebe began to feel the chains around her spirit loosening, but she knew the sisterhood wouldn't let her go without a fight. The following day, Adebe felt a renewed sense of purpose, but she knew she wasn't safe. The sisterhood's reach extended far beyond the confines of their meetings. Every glance, every whisper in the hall felt like a warning. Nkem Anamora went down with her, and their retaliation would come soon. Reverend is advised her to take precautions. The spiritual battle is often mirrored in the physical world, he said. Pray constantly, Adebe, but also be wise. Avoid them, stay vigilant, and let me handle the rest. Despite his comforting words, Adebe's fear lingered. That evening, as she prepared to sleep, she placed her Bible under her pillow, whispering prayers into the stillness. Yet, her rest was anything but peaceful. In her dream, she found herself in a vast, barren desert. Shadows danced around her, their forms twisting and flickering like smoke. Among them stood Amora, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. You can't run, Adebe, Amora said, her voice echoing like a thunderclap. You belong to us. But as Amora reached for her, a blinding light pierced the darkness. A figure emerged, a regal, elderly woman dressed in traditional attire adorned with cowries and beads. Adebe recognized her from a tale her grandmother used to tell, Neka, the protector of those who called out for deliverance. Neka, Adebe whispered, her voice trembling. The woman nodded, her voice firm yet gentle. Child, you are at a crossroads. Fear not, for the power of the light always triumphs over the shadows. Stand strong and call upon the wisdom of your ancestors. They walk with you. When Adebe woke, the dream lingered in her mind. She felt the courage of her ancestors coursing through her veins, but she knew the sisterhood wouldn't let her go quietly. Later that day, as Adebe walked across campus, Nkem and two other sisters cornered her. Their faces were masks of fury. We warned you, Nkem snarled, her voice dripping with malice. You can't just leave. Adebe held her ground, clutching the Bible hidden in her bag. I don't belong to you, she said, her voice steady. Your power is nothing compared to the God I serve. Amora appeared from the shadows, her presence commanding. You're making a mistake, Adebe, she said, but perhaps you need a final lesson. Before Adebe could respond, the sisters began chanting in unison, their words strange and guttural. The air around them grew heavy, and Adebe felt an invisible force pressing against her. It was as though the very ground beneath her was shifting, trying to pull her under. But instead of succumbing to fear, Adebe closed her eyes and began to pray aloud. Her words were shaky at first, but as she continued, they grew stronger, infused with faith. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, she said, her voice cutting through the chanting. The oppressive force began to waver, the air around her shimmering like heat waves. Amora's confident expression faltered, her eyes narrowing in disbelief. What are you doing? She hissed. Adebe didn't stop. She prayed louder, invoking every scripture her parents had taught her. Suddenly, the pressure lifted, and a powerful wind swept through the area, extinguishing the candles the sisters had lit. Amora stumbled back, her confidence crumbling. This isn't over, she spat, retreating into the shadows with the others. Adebe watched them go, her knees trembling but her heart steady. She had won this round, but she knew the battle wasn't finished. Returning to her room, she called Reverend It. They tried again, she said, her voice heavy with exhaustion. Then we must escalate, the Reverend replied. You need a cleansing, Adebe. And this time, your parents must be involved. The next morning, Adebe packed her belongings and left the college for home. Reverend It had insisted she return to her family, where the bonds of love and faith could fortify her against the sisterhood's hold. As the bus rumbled toward Umok, Adeobi replayed the events of the past weeks in her mind. Fear still clung to her, but so did hope. When she arrived, her mother greeted her with open arms, immediately sensing that something was wrong. "Adeobi, my child," she said, holding her tightly. "What has happened to you?" Her father joined them, his co-presence a source of strength. "Let's sit down, Adeobi," he said. "You're home now. Whatever it is, we'll face it together." As the family gathered in the small living room, Adeobi told them everything about the sisterhood, the rituals, the darkness she had witnessed, and the spiritual battle raging within her. Her parents listened in silence, their expressions shifting from shock to resolve. Reverend Is arrived shortly after, carrying a warm Bible and a bottle of anointing oil. "This is not just a fight against flesh and blood," he said, his voice firm. "It is a battle against principalities and powers. But Adeobi, you are not alone. God has been with you through it all." The cleansing ceremony began in the family's living room, where Reverend Is led prayers of deliverance. Adeobi knelt in the center of the room as her parents prayed fervently alongside the Reverend. The words of the prayers filled the air, their power palpable. As the Reverend anointed her forehead with oil, Adeobi felt a searing heat spread through her body. It wasn't painful, but it was intense, as though every shadow clinging to her spirit was being burned away. She began to weep, her tears mingling with the oil as her family's prayers grew louder. Suddenly, the room grew cold, and the lights flickered. A strange wind swept through the house, rattling the windows. Adeobi's mother grabbed her hand tightly, her voice unwavering as she prayed. "You have no power here," she cried, her words directed at the unseen forces. Adeobi felt a pressure in her chest, as though something was trying to hold on, refusing to let go. But then she remembered Nico's words in her dream, "Call upon the wisdom of your ancestors." With all her strength, she cried out, "I break every chain. I renounce every bond. I am a child of God." The pressure lifted instantly, replaced by a warmth that flooded her entire being. The wind stopped, the light stabilized, and a profound stillness settled over the room. Reverend S smiled, his eyes filled with relief. "It is done," he said. Over the next few days, Adeobi began to heal. Her parents surrounded her with love, recounting stories of their ancestors' faith and resilience. Reverend ETS continued to visit, guiding her through scripture and prayer. Back at the college, rumors spread that Amora and Kem had suddenly withdrawn from the sisterhood activities. Some said they were afraid, others claimed they were facing unexplained misfortunes. Whatever the truth, their grip on the school began to weaken. As for Adeobi, she returned to her studies with a renewed sense of purpose. The scars of her ordeal remained, but they served as a reminder of God's power and the strength of her faith. Years later, Adeobi would recount her story to others, warning them of the dangers of straying from their foundation and the power of redemption. She became a beacon of light, her journey from darkness to freedom inspiring everyone she met. In the end, Adeobi's story wasn't just about breaking free from the sisterhood, it was about reclaiming her identity, her faith, and her purpose. She had faced the shadows and emerged victorious, her spirit unshaken, her heart filled with hope. Adeobi's journey offers profound lessons about faith, resilience, and the importance of staying true to one's values, even in the face of great adversity. The story teaches us that remaining grounded in our core beliefs is essential. Adeobi's struggles began when she strayed from the faith and values that had been instilled in her by her family, but her redemption came when she reconnected with those foundations. This highlights the importance of holding fast to what we know is right, no matter the pressures we face. It also underscores the impact of the company we keep. Adeobi's involvement with the sisterhood led her down a dangerous path, demonstrating how the wrong associations can pull us into darkness. The story reminds us to choose our friends and influences carefully, as they can either uplift us or lead us astray. Faith is a powerful weapon, and Adeobi's ordeal reveals that through prayer and reliance on God, one can find the strength to overcome even the darkest challenges. The story also emphasizes courage in the face of fear and adversity. Adeabi's choice to confront her fears and return to the light illustrates that it is never too late to make the right decision and reclaim one's true self. Ultimately, Adeabi's tale shows that redemption is always possible, no matter how far we have fallen. Thank you so much for watching. What did you learn from this video? Please comment it below. Most importantly, subscribe to this channel to keep getting more interesting stories like this. Share to your loved ones to learn one or two. Where are you watching from? Comment below. Let's interact in comments. Bye for now.